This is 27-year-old Laura Hood. She has been under investigation for falsely accusing a 29-year-old married father and taxi driver, Mr. Haroon Yusuf, of one of the worst crimes imaginable. This story is absolutely mind-blowing. Laura Hood is a human resources worker for a law practice. On a winter night, she had been out drinking in Manchester city centre to celebrate her best friend's birthday. At the bar, she knocked back wine, ciders, and vodka shots. During that drunken night out, she ended up losing her iPhone and became separated from her friends. At about 1 a.m., Laura sees a taxi which she then hails to get herself back home. She entered into the vehicle and told the driver, who was Mr. Haroon Yusuf, that she wanted to go home to Stockport, Greater Manchester. She told the driver she needed to make a stop at a bank machine to pull out some money. As requested, Mr. Yusuf drove her to a Tesco Express and Laura exited to use the cash machine. She walked back to the taxi and was then driven home. And this is where things get really interesting. Laura was really noisy when she got home and her mother asked if she was okay. Laura then went up to her mother and stepfather's bedroom and was sobbing uncontrollably as she entered into the room. When her mother asked her what was wrong, Laura said she had lost her phone at the bar and that the man driving the taxi had forced intimacy onto her. Her stepfather called the police. Laura told the police that as the taxi driver was taking her home, they were driving down the road and instead of taking a right turn toward her house, he turned the other way. She then said that the driver stopped at the side of the road and went into the back seat of the cab where he grabbed her, put on protection, and pulled her knickers down while kissing her all over. Allegedly, he then went all the way and it was hurting her. She said that when he finished, he got off her and drove her to the top of her road. Her mother had asked her why she didn't fight back, and Laura said that she was scared and that she thought it would get worse if she did. She then said that instead of dropping her off at her house, he had dropped her off at the end of the road and she had to walk home from there. Police heard this tragic occurrence and quickly traced down Mr. Yusuf. In front of his colleagues, the police put him in handcuffs and arrested him. Due to the investigation, Mr. Yusuf found himself sitting in prison for about 20 hours. His taxi had been forensically examined and investigated. He even had to provide intimate samples in front of strangers. The accused father and taxi driver was interviewed and had given a full account of his actions. He said he didn't take any detours, he didn't stop off at any side streets, and that he dropped her off where she asked him to. He denied any kind of physical contact with Laura and said the drive was in all respects entirely unremarkable. He then disclosed something that would prove to be pivotal in this investigation. His taxi is fitted with a tracker device that very precisely records the movements of the vehicle. The police spoke to the tracker company, which holds all the data for the tracker. The company confirmed that the data cannot be changed by the user and they provided the data to the police. Every single turn the taxi made would have been recorded on the device. This changed everything. Laura's version of events was exposed when the tracking device linked to the driver's cab revealed that the vehicle had driven straight to Laura's home in Stockport, Greater Manchester, without stopping. The forensic evidence gathered showed no physical contact between the driver and Laura Hood. The male DNA found in her underwear was not his. If it was not for the tracker data, Mr. Yusuf could have been wrongfully jailed for many years. There were a few other inconsistencies throughout the story, such as her describing her attacker as a man in his mid-50s with no facial hair, while Mr. Yusuf was 29 with a full beard at the time. Laura still continued to say that her story was true, that she had been victimized in the worst way, even after the evidence and tracking data was revealed. She kept this narrative for about 2.5 years before finally admitting at her trial that her story could not have happened, that the married father could not have done the awful things she alleged. The Crown said Hood had stuck with her lies for so long and the events had snowballed. Detective Constable Laura Hughes said this: Laura Hood put a completely innocent man through a dreadful ordeal. She showed a complete lack of regard for how her false accusation would affect him and remained emotionless when police confronted her with irrefutable evidence that she was making the whole thing up. Judge Julie Warburton said Laura's actions showed a blatant disregard for the rights of the man she accused and the effects of making such allegations. Another judge said that he found the whole experience harrowing and upsetting and was concerned about the longer-term effects upon this poor man's reputation. He was initially unable to work as a taxi driver and had restrictions placed upon him. The falsely accused father of two had been arrested in front of his colleagues and spent 20 hours in jail for this awful allegation. He mentions having tears in his eyes when he had to take his clothes off in front of strangers and provide an intimate sample while in custody for something he did not do. The man said, "I don't think this woman really understands what she had done and how it affected my life. This is the most disgusting thing that anyone can be accused of. When I pick up single female passengers, I always worry that something could happen again. It still affects me in my day-to-day life. I don't know if I will ever come back fully from this. Before this incident, I was a strong person. However, I am now negative and worry that things can go wrong." Laura had to stand trial for the crime of perverting the course of justice. Laura continues to say that she is innocent and denies the allegations against her. She says that she had not knowingly lied and instead had a false belief of, quote, "something so clear in my head." After saying this, Laura had seen a consultant forensic psychiatrist on 2 occasions, but they concluded there was no medical or psychiatric explanation for her supposed belief. The case of perverting the course of justice was given to a jury of 9 women and 3 men at Manchester Minshull Street Crown. The jury found Laura Hood guilty by a 10-2 majority verdict after deliberating for more than 6 hours. The prosecution said this is the clearest possible example of perverting the course of justice. All that being said, I do wonder why 2 of the jury members voted that Laura was not guilty despite the evidence presented. She did end up with a 3-year prison sentence, which is a fraction of the sentence that this father of 2 would have received if he had been falsely convicted. According to Statistics Canada, 19% of essays were found to be false in 2016 and 14% were found to be false in 2017. When they say false or unfounded, these are cases where the police determined that the assault did not occur and was not attempted. The fact of the matter is that these types of false allegations are very difficult to prove false. This case was one of the unique ones because the driver was incredibly fortunate that there was a tracker on the taxi he was driving. If that were not the case, he likely would have been behind bars for many years. So, why do you think those 2 jury members voted the way they did? And what are your overall thoughts on this case? If you share our mission for true equality, like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one.
Equality over everything.